Every business wants good customer reviews. Every customer wants a good experience. So what happens when both sides click? Or in some cases, when they don't? From Yelp and Entrepreneur Media, this is Behind the Review.
Behind the review, dig deeper too. Behind the review, get all the news. Food, flowers, fixing, make business boom. Behind the review, dig deeper too.
I'm Emily Washcovick, Yelp small business expert. Behind the Review features conversations with business owners and customers who wrote one of their Yelp reviews. In our discussions, we talk about lessons they've learned that can be used by other businesses to improve their own reviews and their bottom line. This week, we're doing things a little differently. I sat down with Kevin O'Connor, the host of This Old House, an Emmy-winning home improvement show that's been around for over 40 years. Through his work on the show, Kevin has met tons of home pros and really brings a lot of insights from their experiences that can help local businesses everywhere. Let's give our conversation a listen.
Well, it's nice to be here with you, Emily. Thank you for the invite. I'm Kevin O'Connor. As you know, I'm the host of This Old House and Ask This Old House, the PBS home improvement shows, something I've now been doing for 20 plus years. I'm part of an ensemble cast of professional trades, men and women, and we go out and we fix up old homes. We do it on TV and we share it with the world via PBS and Roku. My path to it is a little unconventional. I never expected to be in television. I came from a finance career right into TV, and mostly because I was basically discovered. My wife and I had bought our first house, which was a fixer-upper, and it's exactly what we wanted, kind of almost an abandoned two-family. I grew up watching This Old House, and I've got a lot of trades sort of in the family, construction and such, so grew up on job sites. So even though I didn't go into that professionally, I wanted to do it on the side, and that's what we were doing, fixing up our 1893 Queen Anne Victorian up just north of Boston. And as soon as we got into it, like everyone else, we were like, oh my God, what have we done? Sort of too much to pull off. That caused us to write a letter to the This Old House magazine. I don't know why we did that. I don't know why we thought writing a letter was a good idea, but they were starting a new show called Ask This Old House, which is now 20 plus years old. And they read the letter, they came to the house, they filmed an episode with my wife and I, which was a thrill as a fan of the show. And 3 weeks later or so, I got a phone call and they said, hey, you want to leave your banking job and host This Old House? So I said yes, thinking I'd be back at my desk at the bank about a year later, 6 months later, and here I am 20 some odd years later still doing it.
It is wild. When I was reading a little bit of your bio and the year that you took over, I was like, wait a second. You know, we all have those moments when you look at a year that's 20 years ago and you think it's 10 years ago, and then you do your quick math.
Yeah.
But in that time, I mean, you have met so many business owners and local operators. For those people who don't know the show, can you give a little more context to how you do your different episodes and the opportunity you've had to work with all these different operators?
So the thing that makes This Old House unique, aside from the fact that it's the first of its kind, it started back in 1979, before cable television even existed, and certainly before all the home shows on cable were on. The thing that makes us different is that we're still doing what we did that very first year, and that is we're putting professional contractors on camera. There's a host. Back in 1979, it was Bob Vila, and he walks around and he asks these contractors who are doing real work on a house with real money over the course of a real time frame, a year or so, sort of how to do it right, what are the pitfalls to avoid, these types of things. So my role as the host, as the only sort of person on the cast that doesn't run a construction company, a contracting company, my role is to engage with them and ask questions as if I'm the audience, which I very much was when I first started. How do I do this? Don't leave until you help me. I got 14 more questions, this type of thing. But that puts me in front of professionals, business people. Everyone on the show, even though they're on television, none of them have given up their primary business, their plumbing businesses, their landscaping businesses, their carpentry businesses and such. So that's my day to day. And we have, dozens of subs on our regular job sites, and we travel across the country working on houses, and we're at it 12 months out of the year. We make 52 episodes of both programs, which is a boatload of TV, and I've been doing it for 46 years.
52 episodes is crazy. I don't even do 52 podcast episodes in a year, and that's audio.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
insane. Okay. Let's talk a little bit before we even get into the home services stuff. Now that you gave me the scale, I'm going to ask you a question that I normally do at the end, but talk to us about work-life balance, managing things. You told me you're about to pick your kids up later, so you have a family. How do you do all of that?
So it's not easy. It is fun, but it's not easy. I'm married 20 plus years. And so my wife, Kathleen, is very much my partner in that endeavor. She left her career when we started having kids. I have three, one who's just gone off to college and two who are in high school, twins. So until just recently, she's now back to work, but she took up the burden of the home life, and that allowed me to sort of fully engage in this old house. It's a lot of travel because we do work out of state, and we do the factory tours and all the publicity and stuff. And the host gets the burden of most of that stuff. So I was on an airplane, am on an airplane quite a bit. The work-life balance comes from having a very good partner who is bought into this equation full on. And what I've learned over the years is the other part of the equation is me pushing back. Me sort of saying, you're very eager when someone offers you a television job or any new job. You're sort of like, whatever you need, whatever it takes. I really want to do this. And so yes is often the answer. Making no one of the answers is something that I've learned as I've moved forward in my career, because no is powerful. Everyone wants you for something, and it's up to you to kind of prioritize. And no is the way of sending that message to that's not important enough for you or me. Yes means it's very important. So it's that, I struggle with it as much as anybody. And I can tell you a million stories about when I sort of felt like I was at my breaking point or whatever. But here I am still doing it. We got through it. It is that partnership, and it is that sort of taking the responsibility to kind of push back and say, not right now.
Yeah. And that's an evolved skill, I think, saying
Oh,
no.
yeah.
And,
Oh, yeah.
it takes a lot of practice. And I think with business owners, sometimes they don't feel like they have that autonomy because it's like, well, if I want to make money, I got to take this job and this job. But especially with home pros, you really have to be the knowledge expert in what you provide and be realistic with the client about what they want. That's like the evolving relationship between a home pro and a client, I feel like. Teaching them what's possible, trying to take what they want to do and be realistic about it and press back. Can you speak to that maybe, and just what you've learned the home pros do that do it well to be that communicator and educator and set the right expectations with customers?
So turning down work is a really hard thing to do. When you're looking at a pipeline as a small business owner and you realize that, 1, 2, 3 jobs out, you've got to sort of fill the book. Saying no is scary. And I totally get that. I've got a little bit of in my own life just on the sort of side business of speaking and appearances and that. But for them, that's a really scary proposition. But I have learned from the folks who I work with that really understanding your business. When is it that you start making money? When is it that the job starts paying you back in terms of profit is essential to understand. Understanding the concept of opportunity costs is important, because every job you take means that you're filled for that period of time and you can't take another one. And so now you're in the position of, well, if you take a lesser quality job, you've blocked an entire chunk of your calendar from taking a higher quality job. So it is a real discipline. The folks who I work with, what I have found is that one of the ways that they have successfully given them the muscles to be able to say no thank you is to build a robust enough operation that can withstand a couple of punches, a couple of low periods. be lean enough, that they don't have to lay people off when it gets slow, but be big enough that they're able to kind of adjust and bring in revenue various ways. And that is important, because if you're just going from one job to the next, you're going to be more inclined to say yes. And that can cost you quite a bit. I've listened to guys in our business, general contractors, for example, who have done the numbers, and it's taken them years to even come to this realization. Sometimes with their companies of 30 or 40 employees out on, a half a dozen job sites or more, the company, the boss, isn't making money until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And a lot of these guys don't work past 3:30. That's a scary proposition, like to really understand when it is that you're profitable, make money. So it is a discipline. It is flexing that muscle to keep it strong. But no is a powerful device. Scary, but a powerful device.
Yeah. You brought something up there that made me think we need to take a moment to talk a little bit about profit and loss sheets, paying attention to expenses, and all of that. In my 10 years at Yelp, I continue to be shocked at how many businesses across all categories don't keep a profit and loss sheet or don't pay attention to what they're spending and what they're going to charge and what they're making. In home services, we have materials and labor, which are two really big factors you need to be keeping in mind. Do you have any advice for businesses on why looking at the numbers is important, how it can be beneficial? You have a finance brain before your TV world. So, what kind of guidance can you give our small business owners to encourage them to pay attention and why that would have a good impact on their business?
If you're running a carpentry business that does, let's say, high-end kitchen installs or high-end trim work, cabinetry, millwork, and stuff, you would never send in a plumber to trim out the kitchen. You wouldn't do it. And yet, so many times, the folks who run these small, specialized trade companies, they think that they're going to be the finance person as well, that they're going to do the invoicing, the materials, the pricing, the collection, the advertising, and all that kind of stuff. And it sort of doesn't make much sense, right? Just like they would never send a plumber in to trim out the kitchen, why would you think that you're going to be the person who does the finance? So it's a long way of saying you have to understand that it is a specialty, that it has a touch and a feel, and that you're well served by having somebody with experience in it that knows the discipline. And I learned that, as you say, in my previous finance career. I was a banker as it was, but we were all specialized, extremely specialized. We were corporate lending, large commercial, sports in particular, and then certain leagues and teams was our specialty. So to say you're a banker, someone else did a completely different thing 2 cubes down from me. Specialty was key. So I do think people need to really appreciate that running the books and looking at the numbers is a skill in and of itself, and that they shouldn't feel that just because it has to be done, it has to be done by them.
Absolutely. Okay, I think this is a segue nicely into collaboration. When I talk to a lot of business owners, I'm encouraging them to collaborate as a way to build brand awareness, right? Maybe you're a retailer and I tell you it would be cool to team up with a coffee shop or a cafe. But home pros, I mean, that's like the world of collaboration. Like you said, you have a skill set and you're working with a lot of other skilled professionals to get an ultimate project done. What would be your guidance or advice? What have you seen work really well when you're kind of orchestrating these contractors on the projects? How does someone go about collaborating in a meaningful and impactful way for their business?
There are two thoughts that I have on that. A lot of the projects that are delivered to the homeowner pass through the hands of an architect, oftentimes some form of engineering, and then the contractor. And all three of those sort of have to work together, collaborate. The homeowner doesn't get the house finished from any one of those specialties. All three have to come together to make it happen. And so there's this expression that I've heard and I really like, which is it's never about winning. It's always about succeeding. winning by definition means somebody loses. And so if the architect's going to try to win the project in terms of being the hero to deliver it, it's not going to work very well because they need the contractor, they need the engineer. So there's this constant sort of give and take and balance. And that being said, a lot of these businesses are all dependent upon subcontractors. So the general contractor doesn't have the plumbers or the mechanical HVAC guys on staff. They rely on specialty firms for that. So there's a lot of collaboration inherent, and it's important. And what I've seen the successful ones do is that, the rising tide that lifts all boats. What's good for the GC subs is good for the GC. He wins loyalty from them. He wins promptness in terms of their response. He wins their leaning into the project and caring about it considerably. He is giving them business, but they are also making his product better and his business stronger. So collaboration is essential. To avoid it, to try to win or try to beat out those other people you rely on, there's a lot of people who wash out of our industry. And that's a big part of the reason why, because they do not know how to sort of integrate those services. They're trying to win as opposed to trying to succeed.
Yeah. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and bring you back to the TV specific side of things. I'm always telling local business owners that they need to tell their story. What entices someone to spend money with them is oftentimes the fact that they're locally owned, or, they have this origin story or this tie to whatever it is that they offer. Do you have advice, especially for businesses that are shy to tell their own story or have a hard time promoting themselves or talking about themselves? How do you get the contractors and subcontractors to do that on the show? Is there a trick or a way that business owners can start to tell their story and kind of market themselves through talking about who they are and what they do?
I'll give you a couple of examples. It is hard, to get folks to pick up social media and try something new. It's a little weird. I personally don't like it, myself, but I do it. And I've been doing it for years, mostly to sort of motivate my brothers and sisters who work with me and our company to sort of get into it, and have built a decent following in the process. The thing that people need to understand is that, and this is, I think, especially true in our profession, in the small business profession. Think about this. There's roughly 600 or so, 100,000 construction companies in the US. A quarter of them have one employee, and something close to 95% of them have 20 or fewer employees. So these are all, by definition, small businesses. So and they serve typically one geographic location. So we're not branding ourselves like Coca-Cola or picking up a national advertising campaign. This is a very small, focused way. And telling your story, which is easier now than it has ever been because of the digital world, is the single best way to connect with potential customers, because that's how they're trying you out. We have a general contractor who we work with. We love this kid, Zach Detmore, in New Jersey. I'll be leaving tomorrow morning to go down there and spend 3 days working on his job site with him and his crew. He's very prolific in social media. And he doesn't sit there and make posts saying, hey, I'm Detmore Construction, you can hire us, we've got an opening, or we'll give you a discount. He doesn't do any of that. He tells the story about what he's doing on the job site. And in the process of telling that story, he lets everybody who's watching know his values, because he talks about the people who work with him and he shows off what they do. He talks about what he delivers for the homeowner in terms of quality and craftsmanship. And he does what I like to call is, he doesn't chase his customers, he attracts them. So he makes his story so authentic. He treats his people so well, treats his customers so well, that people start flocking to him. Zach gets over 90% of his new employees who find him via social media. They come to him and say, I'd like to work for you. And the same thing goes with client acquisition a lot. And I know 3 or 4 other people who I'm very close with who run construction companies who have a similar formula and get over 90% of their employees and clients through it. So that storytelling is essential. It's also a superpower because you can do it virtually for free. You can do it on your own terms. And you're probably not going to be good at it at first, but you can teach yourself. There's a lot of tools out there to help you do it, and it is really an effective way to do it. But in my experience, it sort of needs to be authentic.
And I like what you said about they're not trying to be Coca-Cola, and that's good guidance for social media too, right? If you're a local plumber or, tile guy, you don't need 50,000 followers. You really only need a couple hundred, and you need people in your area talking about it or sharing the images of your projects. So that's a good reminder. The goal isn't necessarily to try to get in front of thousands and thousands of people. It's to curate your story, get comfortable using that free medium just by practicing and doing more of it, and attracting clients in your area who are going to spend money, not just eyeballs to watch you all the time.
100%. This is still a very small, regionalized battle. It is a word of mouth business for this category of businesses as well as many other small operators. And so that word of mouth, that review, that post, that sharing of those things in a very small but viral little network can be really powerful.
Absolutely. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about businesses that want to grow. Maybe they start as a solopreneur or even have like one or two employees. You have a good concept about this, that small is harder and growth is good. I'll let you say it in your own terms. I don't want to like ruin the whole lead for you, but talk to me a little bit about what you've seen, what you've experienced, and why growth is a benefit. And then after that, we can dig into like how to approach growing a business. How do you find the right people to join, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, small is harder. There's no doubt about it. For the reasons that we just talked about, the one person, two-person shop doesn't have the luxury of hiring the finance expert to stay on top of the bills or do the analysis of what hour during the day are you making any money versus just paying for materials or labor and such. And so size gives you that benefit. There are some very fascinating statistics on sort of productivity measurements. So construction as a whole has lagged manufacturing, agricultural, and retail in terms of annual productivity growth, which is unfortunate. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're fractured and small. But just to put it in context, since the end of World War II, productivity growth in construction is basically flat. And it's up over 1,500% for things like manufacturing, agriculture, and retail. And if you look at sort of a more even closer snapshot of, say, the last 20 years or so, it's about half as much as sort of, say, manufacturing. Okay, so construction hasn't done that well. But if you look within the construction world and break out that growth rates, what you see is you see the larger parts of construction. So residential spec home building by the national builders, productivity is sort of up here to the right, higher up to the right. And then the sort of very specialized one-off, say, framing is sort of down here. So the smaller you get, the harder it is to grow and to be productive because you don't have that specialization of the trade, of the task, or what have you. So small is hard. That's not to say it's bad. It could be a lifestyle choice. It's always a great place to start for many people. But if you do want to get out of that, then growing is essential. And I believe that productivity is sort of the secret sauce to it. It's basically the definition of, putting fewer inputs in and getting more outputs out, doing more with less. So your ability to do that, and you can do it a whole bunch of different ways. I have seen our guys do it 1,000 different ways. Whether it is the specialization, whether it is offsite construction. We've got some amazing builders who have sort of given up building on the job site, so they can build everything inside because it's controlled conditions. It's a factory floor, basically. They have guys who no longer are framing walls down on their hands and knees on a muddy job site. They're doing it at a table without having to bend over, these types of things. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. I have always seen that the successful companies that have grown from small to bigger, from 2 people to 70 people, are the ones who embrace that sort of specialization and that productivity wholeheartedly. And they're constantly chasing it. everything they do. Is this making me more productive? Is this making my employees more productive? Is it making it easier for them, more efficient? All of that. And they never stop. They're relentless to chase that. And it is, I don't think it's easy for them, but it is definitely proven to be successful.
I think that's great advice. Okay, let's talk about reviews.
Sure.
I'm not sure how you want to go about this. I mean, we could talk about like reviews and feedback for the show. We could talk about it as, individual contractors and service providers. Why don't you just kind of start talking about feedback and then I can maybe ask a follow-up question or two.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as I said, it's a word of mouth business for us and for all of these people. And so reviews are essential. I get asked a million times every time I do a media hit, the morning shows and stuff. What's the number one tip you give people for finding a contractor? My answer is always the same, which is get 3 references and make the call, because you want to talk to somebody who's worked with that professional. So it's still very much a word of mouth business. So the review is essential. And as we all know, they're sort of asymmetric. You need 10 good ones and one bad one can sink it and all of that. So you do have to sort of work it. But that is very important. And even though I don't run a construction business, I do have to deal with that sort of feedback loop because we have it. And the show is very public, and there's 250,000 followers that I have on social media. And so you sort of have to deal with it regularly. And I will tell you that the thing that I have learned from managing my own feedback, which I think applies to the businesses and sort of their feedback and the reviews, there's a couple things. When I started this job as being the host of the television show, and people were like, "Were you nervous?" And it was it's still the most watched home improvement show on TV. I'm very proud to say. It always was before I got there. Nothing I did. But my answer was no. I have an audience of 4. I have an audience of 4. The 4 gentlemen who at the time I was working with on every job site. That was my audience. So it's a way of saying focus on who it is that you want to talk to and deal with, and push the rest aside, because that is just noise. And so for the small business owner, there may be people, chirping in from the cheap seats or what have you. Focus in on your customers and stay there, because that's what you have to kind of pay attention to. You can't ignore the bad, but you also can't take it personally. It's going to get you beat up and bruised, and it's going to hurt your ego, but it is what it is. Deal with it professionally. Make a decision when you're going to stop dealing with it if it's too toxic or whatever, and move forward. My experience is that 99% of the people I deal with or more, super friendly, very supportive, love the show. And then 1% throws these bombs in there about, oh, he doesn't know anything, hasn't learned anything. Well, he's too Irish, he's too, whatever it is. You just kind of have to just weed through it and ignore them, and just realize that you've got to stay focused on who your target audience is. Stay positive, work it. It's just part of the game. It's just another skill, another muscle to exercise.
Oh, we didn't talk about hiring. Do you have a
Sure.
minute to maybe just talk about that? Any insights, as businesses are trying to grow, tips or tricks for finding the right people, maintaining a good culture, keeping a good team, stuff like that?
Hiring's tough right now, especially in the trades. There's a shortage of people going into construction, shortage of people deciding to work with their hands. So the competition is hard. In terms of hiring, there's a couple things that I have found that the folks who I work with that are successful. Again, telling your story and doing it authentically, very powerful. That's why a guy like Zach and some other folks who I work with get 90% of their new employees coming to them. That idea of attract, don't chase. But the other thing too that's very important is understanding what young people want. I have a good friend. We have a debate. He said, "Oh, when I grew up, I had to do everything by hand, and so I teach my kids to grab a square of shingles, put a rack, and put it up on their shoulder, and carry it up on a ladder, and they got to hammer the first one down, by hand." And I'm like, "That's ridiculous." That's exactly why no one wants to go into construction. If you look at the data, young people are making smart decisions. They are saying, "Hey, I like to be paid well. I like to be exposed to technology. I want to have a path to advancement. I want to have something that's intellectually stimulating, more mental work, less physical work." And so I think it's the business owner's responsibility to dig into that and understand those things. And I've seen our guys do it. A couple examples, they bring carpenters onto the job, laborers whose job is primarily to work around the job site. But some good ones have set up specific training classes to say, listen, you're going to be a laborer, but I'm going to teach you how to use some of the equipment. Some of them even paid for certification for heavy equipment. By giving them a path, by giving them skills, by showing them that they have value, but also that you're investing in them to make them a more productive employee, that's what attracts people to those companies. That's what retains those people. And I know that they're going to lose some people to their competitors, maybe, but I think it's just essential in terms of attracting, retaining, and inspiring those employees for your company. And let's face it, these small companies, the employees are the companies. That is the entire company.
Absolutely. Okay, to close it out, where can people follow you? Where should we like point people and direct people who want to check out more?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this old house is everywhere. So tune into the show, whether it's on PBS, Roku, streaming, a million apps, YouTube. Oh my gosh, it's everywhere. Me personally, I'm on social media. I don't use it as much as I used to, but it's Kevin O'Connor, TOH, on all the various the handles. Yeah, just keep tuning in. We love the fact that folks are still listening to our experts and learning from them.
And that concludes our episode. I hope you enjoyed it and were able to take a thing or two away to implement in your own life. Whether it's a new idea that you can bring back to your business or a fresh perspective on how to be a positive influence as a consumer, we share these stories to inspire and create more meaningful connections in your local community.